Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Now this gorgeous flower stamp from Penny Black is one that I just purchased from scrapbook.com. It is on clearance at the moment, and when I buy a stamp like this I really want to make sure that I get really good use out of it. But this stamp in particular is one of those stamps that I love. So I've actually got 3 videos coming up using this one. I really love this flower stamp, but any flower stamp would work. It doesn't have to be this one at all. So just use whatever you have, or the links will be down below in the description box. So I've put some anti-static powder bag down on my piece of paper first. This is a piece of watercolor paper, the Tim Holtz one. Then I stamped it in VersaFine Onyx black ink, and I have just put over some clear embossing powder, and then I'm going to melt it. And this way, when we are doing a little bit of really simple watercoloring on this rose, I'm able to go ahead and do it a little bit faster than what I otherwise might have been able to had I have not heat embossed it. So these are the colors that I got out for now. So there's Wild Honey, Fossilized Amber, Mustard Seed, and Squeezed Lemonade of the Distress Oxide inks. You could also use the re-inkers and just pop a little bit down on an acrylic block or on a non-stick sheet. I'm using a water brush pen just to lay down some water first, and then I'm going to add down some of the squeezed lemonade. Now you could also use a paintbrush and some water. That would work just fine. You don't have to have a water brush. But what I'm going to do is pop down the first layer, and then I'm going to dry it all. You could also let it dry by itself. That would work fine as well. Then I'm using some fossilized amber, and I'm just going to kind of color in, so to speak, a little bit more of the rose, not quite going out as far on the edges as I did with the squeezed lemonade. So just leaving a tiny little layer there. And you might notice that it's a little bit blotchy as well, and I like that too. It creates some good variation in color. Then I have the peeled paint and the Mowed lawn and the Distress Oxides, and I've popped a little bit of each of those ones down, and I'm doing the same thing with the leaves. I drop in a little bit of color. I am actually mixing these 2 colors on my water brush, so I'm not being quite as specific about which color I pick up. Now I'm just going to go ahead and use a little bit of the spiced marmalade and pop down a little bit of color into kind of the what would be the darker parts of underneath the rose petals. So there's no real science to this. I kind of just follow around the outside of the leaves where I think it might be a little bit darker, but go for gold, and I'm pretty sure nobody will notice in the end anyhow. You can obviously use anything to color in this rose. You could just use the inks with some finger daubers. You could use some watercolor pencils. You could use alcohol markers. Just because you see something happening in the video doesn't mean that that's the same way you have to go about it. So yeah, use whatever you have or whatever you feel most comfortable using. So once I have that next layer on the flower, I'm going to come back and add a little bit more to the leaves. Definitely one good thing about using this kind of watercolor system with the inks is layering things up, and that always helps you to get that nice variation in color too. So I'm going to add a little bit more of those too, not too much, but enough to create a little bit of interest. And then I'm going to go ahead and let this dry whilst I work on the other elements of my card. So I am going to use a stencil for my background today, and I kind of love having a bit of a play around with things, and this is not groundbreaking at all, but I did kind of make this happen and really liked it when I accidentally kind of did it when I was trying out some bits and pieces. So I'm just going to use the stencil as normal, and I have a couple of little pieces of low-tack tape, that are on the back of my piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch cardstock, and these are the scrapbook.com grey inks. So there's Fog, which is grey 1, Rainy Day, which is the grey 2, Charcoal, which is grey 3, and then there is their hybrid black ink. So I recently purchased these and I thought I would give them a go today. I'm going to start off using the Fog, which is the lightest grey ink that they have, and I'm just going to use a little mini ink blending tool Now, the really important thing with this lines stencil is to make sure that you go with the lines, because obviously it is super delicate. And I know you can purchase products like pixie spray and things which make the back of the stencil nice and tacky and keep it in place. However, that's not something that I have, so I am just making sure that I go with the lines of the stencil and it's just fine. So here I'm going to rotate the stencil just 90 degrees to the right or the left, and this way we'll get a really nice pattern when I ink this direction as well. And again, any stencil at all in the background here would be absolutely fine. Just use what you have in your stash. And then once I have finished this layer of the stencil, I am going to go around the outside and add in my usual border. So I really like the way that this looks, but I do feel like in such a simple card that a border goes a really long way. And recently, the way that I've been creating borders is just by using a little bit of low-tack tape. You could use any low-tack tape or post-it notes or masking paper cut into strips. You can use anything, even just copy paper with a little bit of removable adhesive on the back would work perfect. And I'm just using that black hybrid ink from scrapbook.com and a little finger dauber, and it does look like a little bit of a hot mess when I'm going around the outside here, but when I lift it off the page it really finishes the background piece, so I was happy with how this turned out as well. And the reason that I did it in black is just because it creates a really nice defining border, but also because I want to incorporate the black that I stamped the outline of the flower in as well. So there you can see it creates that really nice border, and now I am going to fussy cut out this flower. Now this honestly didn't take too long. The leaves are the trickiest part, but the flower itself is really easy to fussy cut around, and I don't mind a little bit of fussy cutting. You could definitely leave a wider border than I did as well, and that would make your job easier if it's not your favorite thing to do. And then next up, there is one other stamp set that you guys have been seeing in a lot of videos recently, and that is the Letter It All the Little Things stamp set, which is just a bunch of sentiments. Here it is. And this one is honestly my absolute favorite at the moment. I have used this on almost every card recently. It just creates so many awesome sentiments or even sub-sentiments depending on what you need. So I have just white heat embossed the Thinking of You on a black strip of paper. I'm going to use some foam squares on the back of my flower to pop it up, just because it's such a simple front element of my card, so I want to make sure that it stands out just a little bit off the background. I cut them up a little bit so that I could put some on the back of the leaves and things. Then I'm going to use some liquid glue to adhere this down nice and flat onto my 110 pound Nina Solar White card base, and the card base is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch, and you can see how well that black background really makes it stand out, so I'm really glad I did that. I'm going to remove all of the release papers from the back of the rose. I like to add plenty of foam to the back of my elements, just so I know that they won't dip anywhere in the card. I want them to be properly popped up. And then gently pat it all down and cut off the bottom of that stem because it's just a fraction too long for what I need. I'm going to add a little bit of the foam tape from Elena Crafts. This is a really nice thin foam tape, and I'll use this to pop up my sentiment so it's nice and even along the card front. Now the next couple of things that I'm going to do are definitely optional. So I'm going to add a few black nouveau drops. You could also use enamel dots here, that would work perfect as well. And then I'm not going to lie, I saw Jennifer Maguire using the Stardust sparkle pen, so I did go ahead and get some. They come in a packet of 2, and I'm going to add it to just a few little pieces on the rose. Now when I pick it up and kind of turn it in the light here, you can definitely see the gorgeous sparkle that it leaves. So these sparkle pens are really fun, and I will definitely be using them on future projects. I really do like them. That was my card for today, you guys. Super simple, but yet I really love how this one turned out. Stay tuned because I still have a couple more cards coming using this gorgeous flower stamp. Let me know what you guys think of this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks so much. Bye.